off this week. You guys probably saw all the awards. Luke Drzwicki was the Mountain West Special Teams Player of the Week. Jack Lane was on the Davey O'Brien Grade 8. And then earlier today, Damon Bankston, for the second time this year, was on the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose honorable mention list. We are bowl eligible. Everything is still in play. We play in 2 weeks, 12 days from now on the 15th at 1 o'clock against Colorado State on altitude. Opening statement, questions?
It was a good win at UNLV. I thought our team continued to show great just mental toughness responding to some tough situations. You lose a 21-point lead, then you build a 13-point lead and lose that, but still come back and finding a way to win. I thought it was impressive. Good time to have a bye week, I believe. Just playing 6 games in a row. It was a tough stretch. We had three games, and then the bye week. Now we have 6, and then we have 3 left down the stretch. So we got to get healthy this week. We got to continue to improve and get better. And but like where we're at, good to be bowl eligible.
I think you touched on it after the game. I mean, how big of a week for you guys in terms of recruiting is this week?
Real big. I mean, we will have coaches out Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I believe it's 33 days in the fall where you can go out. And if you have one coach go out, that's 1 day. And I think after this weekend, we'll have 1 day left. My third son, Palmer's dressing for his first varsity game. So I get to go. It doesn't count if I go watch him play. So I get a freebie this week. I get to go watch a game, and it doesn't count against our total. But I think every other coach is out. We'll see some junior college games as well. And very big week in recruiting. And then we're going to try to finish up our high school visits and junior college visits with the Colorado State game. Playing on the Friday after Thanksgiving makes it a little tricky to – I just think it's kind of a goofy thing to ask a kid to, fly in on Thanksgiving Day or something for an official visit. So we're going to try to get all those knocked out for Colorado State, and then, that would be kind of it for the December signing period, and then we'd focus all our efforts to January for the portal, signing period.
As a guy that wants to, by and large, build through the prep ranks, right? You had to build through the portal this roster just to fill the roster in a lot of respects too. I mean, how important, kind of pivotal is this class of 2026?
I think really important because it's our first full class. I think it's a little tricky when you get signed. I got hired December 14th or 15th. I mean, that was 10 days after the main signing day for for high school kids. So last year's class. I mean, obviously we had some hits like McBean has shown a lot of early results, and Ziel Smith, Jamar Tassi. Those guys were all guys who really signed with us at Idaho. We had long-standing relationships with. But this year now is our first full class of recruiting to New Mexico. And, I think we've had, Ja Torres is the other one. I think those are only 4 freshmen who've not redshirted so far. I would hope that that number at least doubles and maybe triples, next year as far as true freshmen who can find their way on the field.
Coach, what do you attribute it seems like when you watch this team, they're extremely confident. They're just very resilient, number one. And then also number 2, what would you have to say to fans who are considering coming out for Colorado State, possibly packing up the stadium?
Let's start with that. Again, I think to me this game is big to get 25 or 30,000 people in the stadium. Again, I think that'll be a disappointing turnout if we don't have 25 or 30,000. Just I think this And you know what? The last time we came in with a little bit of a winning streak, we had a huge crowd for New Mexico State. Obviously, that was an in-state rivalry, so I don't expect it to maybe be a fully packed house. But you need to have investments of fans. You need to have investments of boosters. I think they can be more involved than any other time. You look at a team like Texas Tech, who's in the top 10 and has College Game Day. And they were a team that 20 years ago really wasn't a top 10 team, and I think their fan base and their boosters have helped propel them to that. So I think that's big for our fans to show up and show that's important to them and being good in football. And I know people complain about the weather. I think the weather here is the most beautiful weather ever. I mean, even if it's in the high 50s. I mean, November 15th to have the high 50s for a football game, that's gorgeous. I mean, I've been to a lot of football games in the 20s in late November, so should be great. And then I think we are a confident team. I think that's something I try to focus on building. I think you got to build confidence in your players. You got to get your team to be confident, and I think it's important. I'd rather have my team be a little overconfident than underconfident, especially when you're trying to rebuild a a program, and we had to be confident to go in and hang in there with Michigan and to go play UCLA and to go play at Boise or UNLV. I mean, you probably had 4 games on paper where you would have said, preseason we would have been huge underdogs. And we won 2 of those on the road. We would have said Michigan, UCLA, Boise, and UCLA going into the season. They're going to be big underdogs in those games, probably double-digit underdogs, and we found a way to win 2.
Coach, Mountain West title game, I mean, it seems like a real possibility here for UNM. What is the message for your team for the final 3 weeks of the season?
Yeah, we're not talking at all about that. We don't control our own destiny for that. So I don't like talking about things and focusing on things you can't control. So that hasn't come up. If we get to the point where we do, then I think it'll be something we bring up. But, to me, this is a big week just to improve as a team. And as we get in the next week, it's the quest for 7 wins, because I always thought that was kind of, goofy. Again, this will be the first bowl game I've gone to since, 2002 when I was at GA at Colorado. And a lot of those years I was in small college football, FCS or D2, where you have playoffs. And, I used to always think of that some teams go to a bowl game 6-6 or 6-7, and then you lose your bowl game. I mean, is that really a good season if you go to a bowl game 6-6 and lose it and finish with a losing record? So I think getting to 7 wins kind of ensures you're going to have a winning record for the season. So that's what our quest has to be all about. And I think there's a lot of little things that are neat. We haven't beat Colorado State in a long time, like 13 games or something. And that's a long streak. So I think it's staying in the moment. We got to focus on this game.
And last week, like a week ago, exactly to the day, you were praising the UNLV running back as probably the best one that this team's going to face, and your team really stood up to the test. What do you have to say about this run defense and Brian Booker, Gabe Lopez, all those guys?
We're doing a really good job. I thought it was very good run defense. I thought very physical, the whole D-line. Okiki's doing a nice job. Karhu's doing a really nice job. Agu's doing a nice job. Bick Iver's doing a good job. Jackson and Mercury are doing a great job at linebacker. Kaiwan McCray stepped in and really did a good job. So I think we are doing a really good job of defending the run, and we got to continue that. And we got to keep getting better defending the pass. We gave up a few too many 20-yard plays for my liking, about 6 of them. But they got really good receivers there too. And that quarterback, he'd probably. The guy from San Jose played very, very well against us too. I think him and those 2 guys, him and Calandri, I think were the best 2 guys who played the best against us, in conference this year.
Going back to the recruiting front, how much more interest are you seeing from these recruits? Over the last week, are they significantly more eager to come here than maybe they would have been a few months ago? We just got a commitment on Friday when we got on the bus from a kid who was committed to a team in our league who's going to the PAC conference, and he decommitted there and signed with us, and so I do think we're picking up momentum in recruiting, and we need that to carry over. We're kind of nearing the end of the high school recruiting with signing day coming up, but hopefully that hopefully we'll have a lot of success stories that we can tell the kids in the portal. Guys like Damon Bankston, who wasn't really heavily recruited out of the portal. He didn't turn down. Really, really big schools to come here, but he's having a heck of a year. Keegan Johnson's having a heck of a year. Since Saturday, what's kind of the coolest part about becoming bowl eligible? Is it the national attention that you're getting, texts and phone calls that you're receiving?
I think it's just the joy of the players, seeing how happy they are, and I've had a couple people just on campus tell me, Brandy, he's over with the Afro there, and Chris Hudson, who's our director of academics, just saying how she just, notices a little bit the energy of our players and the way they're carrying themselves. They haven't seen it before. And that, stuff like that means a lot to me, because I think those guys are having a great experience, and that's kind of my job, make sure they have a great experience, because I wouldn't have a job without those guys.
Coach, I asked Keegan after the game on Saturday about, being picked 11th, and the expectations weren't very high for this team, but he gave kind of the answer of everyone in the locker room believed. Is it as simple as just a belief in that this team was going to be better than what people thought it was going to be? Yeah,
I think we certainly had belief, and we thought that was a very, going to a bowl game was a very controllable goal. And, I think in building confidence, you need to act confidently. You got to talk, confidently. You got to have good body language with how you go about things. And I think we have built a
a confident team, and you got to put a lot of hard work too. You got to put the work behind it as well. But I like where we're at as far as our confidence and as far as the mental makeup of this team, and it's been a process, and I do think. I have a pretty good confidence just kind of in our formula. I mean, this season's kind of unfolding similar to how my first year as a head coach unfolded as well. So, I think we have a plan, and if we execute the plan well, usually good things happen.
And the perception nationally of this program is that it's hard to win here. But you've got an athletic director and an outgoing president who've done everything they can to make athletics, not just football, succeed here. How important has it been to get that support from Fern, from Garnett, from everyone else?
Yeah, very important because, again, if I didn't think we had a great administration here, if I didn't think we had things going in the right direction, I probably wouldn't have taken the job, because, what I think that's, something that it kind of carries over to recruiting. I look at very similar to like recruiting. I mean, the best is when you can see something in somebody that they haven't maybe outwardly shown it enough that everybody knows it. Obviously some high school players, the quarterback we played at Michigan, everybody in the world realized he was a great player. But trying to find some guys who have some characteristics and show some skill sets that maybe not everybody jumps off to everybody, but jumps off to you, and you see what that player could be. I think Damon being a great example, or Mercury, who's really a small guy, but looks more like probably a sports writer than a college football linebacker, but he's doing a great job these last few weeks. And then, no offense to sports writers. And then, I kind of saw this job. I saw, even though it had not been successful, I saw kind of what I thought we could do and what we could make it. And I think our administration, and Fernando especially, was a big part of that.
Building off that question, Coach, besides the administration, what else did you see here that you thought you could win and put your formula?
Yeah, there was really about three things, and I think I've mentioned this before, but I liked the fact that, you had an AD who had a strong football background and was new, and, I do think, it's good when you have those administrators who are there. I think of some coaches, I know, like Tony Gibson at Marshall, gets hired, and then his AD's fired already before he coached the game, and that kind of happened to Mendenhall at Utah State. Their president and their AD left since he got hired. It's not as ideal. So that was part of it. I think being in the group of five, I think being in a state where there's no Power 4 schools and there's no pro sports, major pro sports, and we got the United, obviously, and the Isotopes, but you don't have NBA or, NFL. I think that's a huge advantage because there's just not as much things captivating where, San Jose State, you got a lot of stuff in that area. You got Stanford and Cal, you got the 49ers, you got the Oakland Raiders, just a lot of competition for eyeballs and getting people excited about what you have. And then used to have the Oakland Raiders, that's true. They're in Vegas now, that's right. And then, I think the third thing was, I think they're working hard here to make our resources better. And, unfortunately, it's been kind of by process of elimination by teams with more resources leaving the conference. But, I think we're really going to be, next year will probably be maybe the first time, I don't know how long, but probably in a lot of our lifetimes that you could say, yeah, New Mexico's amongst the leaders of resources in the conference. And I thought that was, and I knew we got to create momentum this first year and get to a bowl game. But then I thought, yeah, well, now we can be one of the top teams in the conference every year going forward because we're not going to be, near the bottom. And credit to all those coaches over the years when, Arizona and Arizona State were in the league, and TCU and BYU. I looked through all those old records, and there's a lot of losses to teams who you weren't going to play anymore. BYU, TCU, Utah, Arizona State. Now Boise State, San Diego State leaving. Fresno's been good a lot of years. So those were really the three factors why I thought everything came together to make this a good job, and thought we could win here.
And secondly, I know you're focused on just win number 7. It's our job to put the cart before the horse. So did you set your sights too low on the New Mexico Bowl? Let's say you run the table. And I only say that because since the New Mexico Bowl came about in 2006, the Lobos have been bowl eligible bowl 4 times. This is the 5th time. Only gone to the New Mexico Bowl. So, before that, they went to San Francisco, Vegas, Tucson. From a program standpoint, is the New Mexico Bowl a good thing for your program, or would you like to see your players go have a postseason trip for recruiting and for the program?
Yeah, I think for where we are right now, not having been in a bowl game this year, it would be awesome for the program. And, I think we'd have a ton of fans here. Hopefully that would be a great deal. And, we'll have to be creative to do stuff, I think, around that if we're in that bowl game to make it special and fun to our players. Because I know some of the stuff that, maybe is set up with the bowl already is stuff that, like, we've already taken our players to, so you don't want it to be too redundant. But I think we can be creative, and I'm sure we'll have some boosters who can step up and help fund that and find some creative ways to make it different and fun. Now, again, if I plan on being bowl eligible a lot over the coming years, so again, I don't know if I don't want to come to the game, 3 straight years or something. I think we'd want to probably have some change up. But I think for where we're at right now and not having been in the bowl game and really, I would say that for any bowl game. I mean, you wouldn't want to go to the Weed Whacker Bowl 3 straight years or the Potato Bowl 3 straight years or whatever. So, but no, I think it would be great for our program, and I think that would help make it easy for our fans to get there, obviously. But then, hopefully we build some other ones, over time. But I'd be very excited. I told Jeff Symbieta all along that we were going to go to his game.
Coach, you're pretty deep into your season, and you mentioned earlier it's a good time for the bye week. Sometimes earlier in seasons, coaches talk about having time to self-evaluate what they've established that season. What do you do in terms of self-evaluation this late in the season? Do you reconfigure? Do you make major changes in how you're going to approach offense, defense, special teams?
Yeah, I think we have to, we got to look at a few things. I think, offensively, we just got to keep looking. Are we getting the right guys in the right spots? Are we using the right personnel groups? You look at, what Damon, is doing in the receiving game. One of those, he was lined up at receiver in an empty formation. Is that something we should keep doing more of? Just, using our players. Defensively, I think we got to take a long look at, with Austin Brawley now coming back, how we're going to reconfigure our defensive backfield. Obviously, we want to get him in action, but, we've had some guys who played pretty darn good in his absence. We still got to find a way to use those guys and help us win. And then you're always looking for tendencies. We got to really look at, we have these guys in the game. Do we have a real high pass percentage or a really high run percentage, and making sure that, you break some of those tendencies. I thought UNLV actually did a really good job against us. They caught us off guard with some things because they pressured us a lot more than they'd been pressuring. They had new pressures. They did some of their old pressures but played different coverages with them, which, that's what happened on the interception is they had always, when they blitzed their nickel Sam, they'd always played three deep, 3 underneath, and the flat was open. And Jack felt that blitz, and based on his film study, said, all right, I'm going to have the open flat. But it wasn't the open flat because they were playing a new coverage that they had put in the bye week. And we had gotten a little intel from somebody close to the program that, the players were saying, yeah, we're going to blitz a lot more and do that. But, you don't got that the night before the game. And so you don't know what the blitzes are, what they're going to be. But, so we got to do a good job breaking some tendencies. And I'm sure, anytime you go in the week in and week out, you're going to have some tendencies and other people are going to be studying. And you want to you can break those tendencies to your advantage sometimes. If we have formations that we've been running a lot of, to all of a sudden pass out of them and catch people off guard.
In terms of, you mentioned like Brawley coming back in the secondary and all that as well. We kind of talked about the idea earlier that at a certain point of like the offensive passing game, like things just kind of are what they are. With the secondary right now, do you feel things kind of are what they are, even with a guy like Brawley coming back, or where are you in terms of trying to improve there and limit explosives?
That helps us. I mean, getting a guy who's a season starter back, and really you look at it, last game against UNLV, out of our 5 back end positions, 3 guys who started the Michigan game didn't play. 3 out of 5. Caleb Cohen was out, Abe Williams was out, and Brawley was out. So we'll see. I think I'm pretty confident we're going to get Caleb back, but not for sure. Not sure about Abe. We'll get Brawley back. So we got to keep getting guys better. We got to keep making sure we're putting guys in the right positions coverage wise, and there's some things we can coach better. I mean, there's a few times in the game where we maybe didn't have a good call to the formation they were in that we got to keep cleaning up and putting guys in the best situations. But I do still think this bye week being late gives us probably a little bit more of an opportunity to jump between your 9th and 10th game than you would if you were just playing straight through.
Were you saying you're not confident Abraham will be back, like in terms of the season or the next game?
No,
or?
Just for the next game. We'll see how he comes along. So he's not going to practice probably this week.
And then were you aware of like the box of cigars that was like coming out with you guys at all, or like?
I saw it after the game, and I think that was the beauty of having the bye game is we had time we were in no hurry to get back. If we would have had a game last week, we wouldn't have had time for that. We would have been getting guys back on the buses quicker and get them in the showers. But I knew we had a little time to celebrate. It worked out because they wanted to flip the field anyway, and I didn't want to break the fire code and get us in trouble either. So I think they mostly went outside to smoke them and. We got to pull them back to earth because obviously we haven't, clinched the Super Bowl yet. So we got to get back to earth and get to work this week. But no, they've invested a lot of work, and I think having a bye week, I think it certainly was a great opportunity to stop and smell the roses and enjoy and celebrate for a little extra time. And now we're back to work.
With this being your second bye week of the season, how much do you look back at the first bye week, kind of what worked, what didn't work, and going into this week, what do you apply from what you learned that first time around?
Yeah, really, we're going to practice one time less this time, and more of that's just later in the year. You need more recovery and things, so we're going to practice twice instead of 3 times. I think our lifting schedule is going to be pretty similar. We're going to try to scrimmage our young players a little bit tomorrow because we got to keep trying to develop those guys, and there'll be some guys that when you're building a good program, we'll need to have some guys who didn't play a lot last year, but were on the team that become good players next year. I think that's critical just in this era. Because you don't want to always have to replace guys you lose with the transfer portal. You got to develop homegrown guys. So, I would say probably specifically from that last bye week, not a ton, but I'd say just over time, I think we've come to a pretty good plan of how to handle bye weeks and what you need to get out of them, and I think we'll get that out of this bye week.
Coach Jack Snack, I mean, I'm not counting, but he's done a handful of post-game conferences. I remember he told me how excited he was that this was the first year that his team voted him as a captain this year. I mean, you know him better than anyone. What is some stuff that he does in that locker room? Because players just rave about the kind of leader that he is, besides being the monster that he is on the field.
Yeah, I think he's very consistent. I think Jackson is kind of who he is every day. I think he just works hard on a very consistent basis. He is there day in and day out. I think even last year, I think it was tough for him coming here in the spring because he had to have surgery right away when he got here in January. But I think guys, still just respected. He was very still engaged and involved in the groups. I mean, I know they had like a bike challenge one time because we had one of those bikes that has like the arms and legs, and he did it without using his legs because he had the hip surgery. And he was going right with the guy who was using his legs and was really he lost, but it was like pretty close. And I think his work ethic, how he works, and how he is consistent on a day-to-day basis, and then he plays well. He performs well, and he's consistent. Doesn't have a lot of bust. Does his job, and shows up. Knock on wood. I don't think he's had a bad game all year. He's had some games that were probably even a little better, but he's very consistent. All right, fellas. Appreciate it. Enjoy the bye week.
Thanks, Jason.